Quote, a record low 58% of U.S. adults say they are extremely or very proud to be an American, down 9 percentage points from last year and 5 points below the prior low from 2020. That is according to a new poll out from Gallup. It's sort of a depressing note on which to celebrate the 4th of July here in the United States, but the glass half full take here is that still a pretty high number of people who are proud to be an American. Even this 58%, which is a record low of people who say they are either extremely or very proud to be an American. The extremely is 41%, the very is 17%. I'm very comfortable looking at that as a glass half full number. Where you have to look at glass half empty is the decline overall. So if we go back to Gallup's numbers from 2000, it looks like this starts in 2001. You can understand why they would be polling for this at that time. The extremely very starts at 87%. So it has dipped a lot over the last 2 decades. That number being at 87%. Extremely proud was at 55% back then, so just on its own, and very proud was at 32%. That started to dip, and all of these numbers started to dip right around 2004, which is super interesting because there's a handful of mostly Gen X commentators who are constantly reminding the millennials that yes, things are very divisive in the Trump era, but this idea of calling people, comparing everything to Hitler and World War II and all of that was not absent from the discourse in the Bush era after 9/11. A lot of these divisions, these seeds were being planted back then. So I think when you look at this graph and you start to see that decline in 2004, that's when a lot of people started to turn against the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, particularly in Iraq. And these numbers have never recovered. Interestingly, the number of extremely / very proud started going up a bit from 2020 to 2021. That's really interesting, but then has largely plateaued since. Extremely / very proud is down from 67 to 58 between 2024 and 58, and that's mostly because of a decline in the very proud. That went from 26 to 17, whereas extremely proud stayed at 41%. Now, if you break this down by party, Republicans have the highest level of pride in being an American. That's up at 92%. 92% extremely or very proud of Republicans. Among independents, it's only at 53%, and among Democrats, it's only at 36%. Democrats has been jumping around a lot. This is another really sad data point. Democrats, independents, and Republicans were clustered in a similar place when we combine extremely and very proud around 2001. So there was only a 3% difference in Democrats and Republicans, so 90 to 87%. And even independents were up at 84%. This starts dipping for Democrats around 2004, independents as well. It goes up between 2020 and 2021 for Democrats, which might explain that number we were just intrigued by earlier, the change in Democrats, maybe with the election of Joe Biden, actually. And now that number, which was at 42% in 2020 before it started climbing to 62% in 2021, it's now back down at 36% for Democrats, even though in 2024 it was at 62%. These numbers just jump around a ton, but you can see during a Democratic presidency, it appears that Democrats are just more proud to be Americans. Gallup reports that younger generations are less proud than older Americans. So millennials are at 58%. Gen Z is at 41%. That compares with 83% among the silent / greatest generation, people born before 1946. Boomers are at 75, and Gen X is way higher than millennials. So the big dip happens between Gen X and millennials, where it drops from 71 to 58, and then for 41 among Gen Z. And millennials support is going down, and even silent / greatest support is going down. In 2001 to 2005, it was at 93% of extremely or very proud among silent / greatest generation. Now it's dipped to down 10 to 83%. Baby boomers were at 90% in 2001, 75% now. Gen X was at 86%, 71% now. So this has been dropping among every single generation over the course of the last 2 decades. I do contend that with a majority in every generation, except for Gen Z, unfortunately, there's glass half full news right there. But for this country to work, these numbers don't just need to remain high and get a lot higher for Gen Z, but remain high. The trend needs to be reversed. Obviously, if within our living memory, it was possible to have that level of pride in the country, it means it's possible to do again. So that's a hole to dig out of. That means there's some climbing involved, and if it doesn't turn around, I mean, what's the threat of it not turning around? It seems like, for example, when we're thinking about things, this feels like such a tangent, but it really isn't. Like the one big beautiful bill. Why does everything need to get stuffed into a reconciliation package that can be passed by majority instead of 60 votes, hitting the 60 vote threshold in the Senate? Why do they need to do that? Because it's impossible to build consensus now, even within a party, let alone between two parties. That's not me pining for the days of bipartisanship that often are mythologized and romanticized when it was just centrists cutting deals that were good for their benefactors, lobbyists, and donors, and all of that. It isn't about that. It's about actually being able to have the cogs in the Republican machine, lowercase r, constitutional Republican machine functioning. And you just have to be able to build consensus to do that. And it's almost impossible to do that right now. By the way, that's one of the reasons that uh, I think there's a very underappreciated argument for what Donald Trump is doing with the executive branch. Not all of it, but taking some of the power back to the presidency away from these administrative agencies allows decisions to have political consequences. You have a president and their administration who is then to blame rather than an independent, well, the independent agencies are different, like the NLRB. Those are the CFPB. Those are a little bit different. But rather than an executive agency that is acting on its own bureaucratic inertia against the will of a president, which absolutely happens sometimes, you create political accountability in the system. And that is a good thing. Part of the problem is I think some of these things have been outsourced to bureaucracies. But the Gen Z numbers are really bleak that you don't even have a majority. So millennials never dipped below a majority of extreme / very proud to be an American, extremely / very proud to be an American. 2001 to 2005, it was at 77, then dipped to 68, then jumped back up to 76 by 2011, 2015 when Barack Obama was in office, and then has declined to 60 and 58. So the trajectory is pretty bad all around. By 2016, 2020, that's when it dipped to 60. But Gen Z has never been above 50% of people saying they're extremely or very proud to be an American. The year that Gen Z tally starts with Gallup is at 47% between 2016 and 2020. And that has declined since to 41%. Now, among Gen Z's Democrats, Independents, and Republicans, according to Gallup, only 24% of Gen Z Democrats say they're extremely or very proud to be an American. That number is 65% among Gen Z Republicans. It's 48% among independents. But that polarization, and I guarantee you, if you dig into the crosstabs, you find something fascinating between men and women, because we've already seen Gen Z polarizing among Democrats and Republicans along sex lines. That gulf between 65% and 24%, just looking at these numbers right now, I don't see anything like this in any other generation, in any other time period, even since these numbers go back for Gallup. So Gallup writes these implications as being, quote, at the beginning of the 21st century, U.S. adults were nearly unanimous in saying they were extremely or very proud to be Americans, but that national unity has eroded over the past 25 years due to a combination of political and generational changes. Democrats today are much less likely than in the past to express pride in their country. In fact, their national pride has hit a new low. Additionally, Generation Z and millennials are much less proud of their country than their elders are. What happens when you're not proud of your country? Well, you probably don't vote that much. On the other hand, Zohran Mamdani, as we talked about last week, got a lot of young voters out to the polls, got them registered, got them to turn out and vote for him. So is that the secret sauce? I don't know. I think young Democratic politicians don't often talk about America in positive framing. I'm surprised that the number is as high among Republicans as it is, even though for Gen Z, that 65% is lower than members of every other generation who identify as Republicans. So between millennials and Gen Z, it drops from 87 to 65. From Gen X to millennials, it drops from 92 to 87. But there's just so much. There's so much to be upset about. There's so much to be upset about. And these numbers starting to dip most precipitously. I mean, Democratic numbers started to dip a lot after 2015, so that's Trump. But overall, the numbers starting their decline during the Bush era, during Iraq and Afghanistan, and then starting to really decline when Donald Trump comes along. Even for Republicans, the increase after 2016 is pretty small, and then it goes down during the Biden administration. It's now back up to 92. But yeah, Republicans were at 89 in 2016 when Trump came along, and then go up to 95 during the Trump administration, dip back down during COVID and Biden, and are now back up to 92. But all of this started to decline. Republicans are the only cohort here. During the Iraq War, there was 98% of Republicans who said they were extremely or very proud. It hasn't hit that high watermark again, but 95 is obviously really high for Republicans, and likely within the margin of error of this poll as well. So, this polarization among political lines that people don't even feel extremely proud or very proud to be American. It makes me think of the conversation that Mary Harrington and David Betts had on the Unheard channel, that this is so segregated by political party. The argument that there's some type of civil war coming, and you look at numbers like this, you start to take people like David Betts a lot more seriously, because to have Democrats at such low numbers and Republicans at such high numbers, and to have that be so acute for Gen Z, it's just something worth considering on this 4th of July. As unfortunate as that is, we are so blessed in this country to have the freedom to make videos like this and to do public polling like this, and to feel the way that we do about our country openly, and to tell posters how we feel about our country. That if anything, we should all be working to communicate how much of a gift that is compared to both human history, the course of human history, and also today by standards of the rest of the world. It's, I mean, still a wonderful country, but there's a trajectory that's obviously frightening. So 4th of July should be an opportunity. Pop culture has gotten a lot more patriotic in recent years, like Beyonce, for example. There are always times when it's trendier than others. That just how fashion works, obviously. But right now it's very, very in vogue. If you go to Target, for example, there's all kinds of patriotic stuff on the racks right now, in like the young women's section. Like I mentioned, the Beyonce record. Like there's something happening culturally right now. I don't know if that'll move the numbers because Gen Z has only declined since the last time the polling was taken. But the 4th of July is an opportunity to have some of these really tough conversations and leave them feeling good because you had the conversation. And that's an amazing thing that we can do in America, that we can do with neighbors who have vastly different backgrounds, which again, by the standards of the rest of the world and by the standards of human history, is an incredible feat. And it is so American. Never have so many people from so many different backgrounds lived in relative peace together in such close quarters. So this is a time to just make these arguments and have these conversations, have difficult conversations, reflect, and have some hot dogs too. Obviously, have some hot dogs too. Disgusting as they are, they're also delicious, and that dichotomy really speaks to the dichotomy of the United States of America right now. So thank you so much for tuning in to Undercurrents. I hope that you are having a great day, having hot dogs and burgers and grilling and swimming and watching fireworks. We appreciate you tuning in. Remember, at undercurrents.tv, you can get the full experience of the show. There's a premium version behind a paywall where you get a private email address, a weekly newsletter, and full versions of our interviews. You can also make sure to subscribe wherever you're getting your podcasts and on YouTube. We appreciate it. Happy 4th, everyone.